Shalom, everybody. It's Rabbi Laurie Matzkin, PJCC's Chief Jewish Experience Officer, and I'm here on Tuesday, March 10th, just 2 days after our scholar in residence, Rabbi Dr. Shmuly Yanklowitz, finished a whirlwind tour of 10 sessions in 5 days here on the North Peninsula. And he's so gracious to give us a little bit of time to reflect on all of our sessions and the Torah that he brought, and also to give those of you who weren't able to make it this year just a little taste of what we discuss in these sessions. So, Shmuley, thanks for spending just a few more minutes with us.
Well, thank you. And thank you for an incredible visit in the peninsula, which I enjoyed so much. And you were just tireless in your efforts to further Torah and build community and demonstrate the best of collaborative Jewish community that happened there. So I'm grateful to you and all the hosts and all the partners and all the supporters and all the students who came. Some came consistently. I enjoyed the learning so much, and I look forward to coming back to that region sometime.
Before we dive into some specifics, I'm curious if you can tell us, since you go all over the country and you bring teachers from all over the country, like what does it mean to have a series like this, Scholar in Residence? Is this unique? What do you think we're achieving here? Is there something more we could achieve? What is the gift of this program to our community?
That's a great question. It is a great gift, and it is an absolute anomaly on a few fronts. Number one, to bring in teachers of Jewish ideas who can speak to 10 different topics. And really, that is a chance for different people with different interests to plug in where they want. Of course, there's folks who will only come when it's their institution that they like to go to, which is unfortunate. But it also lets people plug into the topic, and I witnessed that as well. People who came for topics. So that's the first gift. The second gift is the anomaly of community working together. I know we have lots of Jewish jokes about polarization and difference of opinions, but it's real. I mean, most communities, like the turf wars and the distrust, you're not going to get multiple synagogues to work together on one thing like that. And so it's really rare what you're doing and important. And in terms of achieving, if it was just strengthening Jewish identity, Dayenu, it would be enough. If it was just inspiring a little bit more morally robust commitments, Dayenu. If it was just building community, it's enough. But to try to achieve all that, identity formation, community building, moral commitment, reflection about how we live and the ethics we live by, and I think we need this more than ever because people are looking at screens and they are not. One of my big themes in the visit was getting more proximate. They're not getting as proximate and talking with each other and coming together. And learning is the greatest gift that Jews have to offer, is like our history of commitment to learning.
Beautiful. Thank you for all that. I hope everyone feels inspired and proud, and will spread the word so that even more people can learn from future scholars. So, speaking of learning, I wanted to go back over a few texts that stood out to me over our time together, and have you kind of reflect a little bit more broadly on how folks can bring these texts onto their heart, as we said. So, the first was this text about the gladiators from the Talmud, and the idea of entering the messy arena, which I think you shared with the PJC staff and the Warnick Day school students, and maybe one other time. So, talk to us about this text and what message you find in it.
Yes, I am obsessed these days with the gladiator arena, partially because Reish Lakish is a fascinating sage in the Talmud. And he, at one point, was reportedly a gladiator by necessity, and partially because there were millions, maybe even 6 to 10 million Jews during the Roman Empire, the pinnacle of the Roman Empire, and Jews were in the arena, uh, um, you know, cheering and watching, and Jews were in the center of the arena fighting for their lives. So it's also history, but mostly I'm obsessed with it because of a debate that happens in the Talmud as to whether you're permitted to go or not. And the rabbis say, no, this is Moshav Leitzim. This is a disgusting place. Don't do disgusting things. And Rabbi Natan says you should go for two reasons. Number one, because you might be able to scream and save a life. And two, because you might be able to testify if a Jewish man dies so that his wife is not an aguna and can't remarry and give her the chance to remarry. And I think that um, sets the stage for me for an important reflection on whether or not we get into the arena today. The world is messy economically, politically, socially, and it is easy to construct a life where you're always in that mess, and it's easy to construct a life where you totally avoid the mess. Um, and I think that um, Jewish values want us to figure out a balance, like often times, um, to harmonize a relationship between being in the mess of our society and working to repair society and bring light to darkness and bring healing where there's suffering, while also having a life of spirit and of learning and of family and of self rejuvenation and self care and compassion. And yes, part of it is work life balance. I work over here, I got my time over here, but it's a little messier than that. I think it's more like a work life harmonization where, that it's almost modes of consciousness. Like, and sometimes externally I'm in the mess, and sometimes internally I'm in a state of spiritual equanimity, menuchat nefesh. And that's not easy to balance, especially as anxiety is increasing. And we need to model for our kids. I'm speaking to myself here. We need to model for our kids how to manage anxiety while not retreating.
Mm, thank you. I think another model of finding this equanimity that you brought to us was this midrash about the 12 paths through the sea that we all, as the Jewish people and those adjacent to us as well, who are part of our community, are walking in the same direction towards a better world. And it's really easy to mistake the next door neighbor's path for a gladiator pit. But in fact, we may be walking in the same direction and
Mm,
just
mm,
focusing in different areas. So I
mm.
wondered if you could share that text and talk about, what it means for you in terms of pluralism and honoring differences, but also staying committed to walking forward. With our rabbinic community, you brought Psalm 23, which talked about Gam ki elech begeitza hamavet, that I continue to walk through the valley of darkness. And that group of rabbis really picked up on the idea of continuing to walk even in these difficult times. So now we have this image of the gladiator pit, and we have the image of crossing the sea, and we have the image of walking forward through darkness.
Yeah, um, I love that. And, so it's
Start with
easy.
telling us the midrash one
Yeah,
more time
yeah.
about
Okay.
the
All
12
right.
lanes.
Yeah, I'll do that. It is easier to be theological pluralists than moral pluralists on some regard
Mm,
because theological pluralists like we live in America, there's still fundamentalists here, but by and large we get that we want to live in a multicultural multi-faith society. But moral pluralism is more complicated. So the midrash, the rabbinic text, talks about how the path through the sea leaving Egypt, led by Nachshon and by Moses and his brother Aaron and Miriam with her timbrels, that they don't go through one path in the sea, but there's actually 12 paths for each tribe. And there were chomot v'chomot, there were walls of water between each path, and there were chalonot v'chalonot, there were windows between each wall of water, saying that each of us has to be authentic to our mission, our purpose, our passion. We have to stay on our path, not someone else's path, but we still have to see each other in each other's paths. And I think it's a really nice balance where if I throw someone else into someone else's path, I'm not being authentic. And yes, might be in a gladiator arena. But if I don't see their path also, so one of the bad words these days is tribal, but I don't think tribal is a bad word. I think tribal is a good word. Yes, there's toxic tribalism, but tribalism, Judaism, Jews are a tribe. I mean, we have and many tribes within the tribe. Um, People should have communities and people should belong in places that they feel like are their tribe. Now, tribalism has to be balanced with universalism. So I think part of the message here is walk with your tribe
Mm.
and see each other's paths. It doesn't mean you have to agree or disagree with anything in particular, but we have to see each other. And I think that this is a model for pluralism in the Jewish community today and in American society at large.
Say a little bit more about why that would be problematic from a moral perspective.
Well, because morally, people feel very certain
Mhm.
that they're in the right and others are in the wrong, and their political party's right and the other one is evil. And whatever their view is of the news is clear. We get that God is not. Most people get that God is not clear who or what God is or entails, or how we bridge our human experience to the divine realm through prayer or whatever else. But when it comes to morality, I think a lot of people feel defensive that they have it kind of figured out, and that makes talking very difficult.
Mhm. So, can the windows be a way to explore in a less reactive way? And is there value in searching for the morality? Maybe
Yeah.
separating the message from the messenger. I know that one of the things you did that I appreciated through your teaching was to say, I'm going to share the challenges first to what I'm going to agree with and then agree with it. So, is there some way we could be more morally sophisticated while
Mm.
staying really clear to what we believe is
Yeah. Yeah. I love that question also. Just like the Talmud says, every Beit Knesset, every house of prayer needs a window
right?
because you can't be narrow in prayer. You have to be looking outwards, and you can't just be too parochial. You have to be seeing beyond. So, too, the windows in the sea are saying that yes, you cannot be a relativist and abandon your core moral principles in the name of relativity, but you do have to find a way to understand that people are watching different news stations now. People have different facts and narratives. People have different teachers and ideologies, and there's more platforms than ever, more microphones than ever, and so more division than ever. And um, and I think that Rabbi Jonathan Sacks in Dignity of Difference lays out a really helpful framework for how we should value unity and cohesion and society building, while also honoring difference rather than washing it away in the name of commonality. And so this is one of the things I think is really hard for people to figure out. And the Jewish community, the way it's playing out is there's radical universalists, tikkun olam, right? But have no interest in Jewish affiliation, identity, standing up against anti-Semitism, standing up for Israel. And then there's the other side that's radically tribal. Everything's anti-Semitism and defending Israel. And the goyim, oh, they're not there for me. I'm not there for them, right? So the healthy balance is to figure out how we have to love our people and take care of our people and also be compassionate and build bridges with other people. And that's the gladiator mess because sometimes you're getting in to some relationships that are not always easy.
Right, right. So let's pivot to the sessions that were really about our consumer behavior, whether it was purchasing power or what we eat or the technology that I would say we consume or rely on. Give us a few pieces of Jewish framework, maybe a few talk lists, practical suggestions about making the invisible visible, which I know you speak about in terms of people in our society who seem invisible, but in terms of choice, that we as consumers have choice, and Jewish teachings and values and ethics can actually help us push us towards a more sophisticated or thought through choice.
Great, great. Well, the most obvious vehicle is kashrut, because kashrut, however we understand it as progressive Jews, as traditional Jews, anything in between, kashrut is basically a foundation for the sanctity of consumption,
Mm.
a sense that we are what we eat. Um, and so that feels like an initial foundation to think about that level of intentionality. The other is the bracha. The bracha is a way of making a blessing, saying, I know what I'm holding, and there's an integrity I bring and a thoughtfulness I bring to my consumption. Going back to the beginning of the Torah is the Garden of Eden, and that the birth of moral consciousness emerges from the first act of food consumption. That it is the Eitz Hadat Tov V'Ra, the eating from the knowledge of tree and evil, that is the first eating, and that gives birth to their moral awareness. And so there's a sense that ethics and consumption are very deeply intertwined. And today we often hide behind simple political identities as sufficient for our moral commitment, that I vote the right way, so I'm a decent person. But I think Judaism says sweat the small stuff. It
Mm.
says shmirat lashon, you should really be thoughtful about how you speak. It says kashrut, you should be really, really thoughtful about what you eat morally, spiritually. Um, it says, ona'at devarim. I guess that's shmirat lashon again. It's in regards to speech, and I think it's also saying that every dollar you spend is a vote. It's a vote in what you want to support. Now, that is not easy. It is very hard to bring this level of intentionality to anything we do, especially something we do as frequently as buy and produce and consume. But that's why I think, in terms of what to do, we should try not to be egregious in any area. But really, we should pick one area we feel most called to and try to just do really well there. You can think about workers' rights, people making below minimum wage or even below living wage, and how to, buy things that have a higher standard. You can think about animal cruelty and how to either go vegan or vegetarian or have meatless Mondays or reduce animal product intake. You can think environmentally about styrofoam and waste. Yeah, you can think about waste, about what we do with leftover food and how unsheltered people who are struggling to get what they need. We can think about health and what we're serving people that we feed food to, and to ensure that we're not, the number one form of death in America is cardiac disease due to animal products, due to sugar and other factors. So there's so many different ways. That's just food. Then to go to other products, we know, actually someone on the trip, a rabbi on the trip was telling me how she buys most of her clothes from thrift shops. That's not something I do, but we don't have to do everything. And that's an inspiring thing to do. That she knows that a lot of clothes is from sweatshops, and there's a lot of waste, and it gets dumped in the global South, all this American clothes. So that's something she does. And there's also the Uyghur genocide in China and other types of really atrocious things happening, and from China and other problematic regions. And to take baby steps. I think to take baby steps on saying I think the most central place in Judaism is the home. Yes, the Beit Midrash, the study house is great. The Beit Knesset, the prayer house is great. The JCC is great. But I think the home, the table, where we eat, where we talk, where we have guests, that's the central place of Jewish life. And that's the place that is supposed to be modeled off of the Beit HaMikdash or the Mishkan, the models of sacred places. And we should say, like, what is in and what is out in my home?
And one thing that strikes me as you're talking about this is that, making your kosher decisions about consumption has to do with getting you from the idea of consuming all the way up until you're about to consume. So the process of where am I buying? What kind of company did I buy from? How is it packaged?
Yep,
How much processed stuff is in it, right? How much
yep,
sweatshop or mines were made for these apple chips, etc.
yep,
And
yep,
then the bracha, the blessing, is really about right before we consume it. So
yep,
I almost see a
yep,
continuum of what you're saying, where there's the pre-decision process and the engaging in getting it. And then there's the, okay, now let me really do that pause, that Viktor Frankl
yep,
pause between
yep,
stimulus and response before
yep.
I take it in. And that really can sew it together.
Yep, yep, I love that. The last thing I'll say about that is that I'm so used to always talking about the ethical side of kashrut, and I do also want to just raise up the importance that I rarely talk about it, but I probably should, of also just the spiritual side outside the ethical. That if someone wants to take baby steps towards keeping kosher in this way or that way, even if there's not necessarily an ethical component, that's also beautiful because we're maintaining Judaism, and when we take on Jewish practices, we maintain Judaism, and that enables it to survive and thrive. And the only way the moral values are going to survive, I think, is if the traditions and theology and ritual beneath it survive. So yes, I'm talking about all the moral side, but there's a value to the spiritual side, that's outside of the moral realm as well.
And they may reinforce each other.
Yes,
So,
ideally they will.
yes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you one more question, which is sort of how do we take this all with us? One of our sessions was called Altruism in the Age of Burnout. So
Hmm.
what is a way that people can stay passionate and connected when it's all just so overwhelming? Maybe it's not as much as the gladiator pit, but we just have so much stimulus at us and we, kind of are in fatigue mode. How can we stay moral, stay Jewish, stay altruistic when maybe we just want to put the covers over us or turn on Netflix?
Great. Well, some of it is just, yes, we should sometimes put the covers over our face. We should sometimes turn on Netflix. We should do fun things. Judaism is not anti-fun. um, and we should surround ourselves by good people, who charge us up. Having a chavruta is the best thing. We need chavruta, people who we like to learn with and build us up and build each other up. Good family and friends, good health and healthful practices. Join the JCC so that you can exercise and be in community. But then also, as it relates to issues, we cannot take on everything. We have to ask ourselves two questions. What is my passion and where is my power? Where is my passion? If I take on a cause that is not deep in me, I'm going to burn out. I need to find one that I love. It speaks to me. I just feel so energized by working on it. And where's my power? We can't be ineffective. We can't just choose any cause just because we like it. We have to be situated and positioned, and so where we can leverage our own unique position to create impact so that we actually make a difference. Because there's nothing worse than caring about something, but hitting your head against the wall and achieving nothing. So we have to care, and we have to make sure we choose things where we can actually make a difference so we feel good and charged by that.
What's so fascinating about that is I think so many people in our community are so impressed with the breadth of what you do that it looks like you are choosing a lot of things, Shmuley. And so
Yeah.
maybe as you wrap up this conversation, not only do you want to share some of those things, but how are you balancing that yourself? I mean, you personally have founded like at least five organizations that each could be a lifetime of work. So what does that look like
Yeah.
for you to be a multi-issue person and also hold that
Yeah.
value of not burning out?
Thank you. Yeah, it is something I have to attend to, because it is very demanding, and I'm grateful to have great people around me who we can work together and share the burden of building together. But just to name a few of those projects and how people can plug in, Valley Beit Midrash is our growing pluralistic Jewish adult learning and action network, and we do Zoom classes all the time. In fact, I teach a Tuesday Talmud class if anybody ever wants to join Talmudic stories. Then there's Yatom, if you want to support child welfare or foster or adopt. That's a project where that just keeps me up at night. That's one of the issues that a child being abused is something I can't live in that world. Then there's Shemayim, where if you're interested in environmental issues and animal welfare, you can plug into Shemayim. And Uri Litzedek, we do a lot of work with immigrants and building kind of religious frameworks for social action. And then there's Thrive by Character, which is a new platform I've launched to try to say, let's soar above the petty political discourse. Let's think more about how we can flourish as people through a lens of character. So those are some of the things I'm doing. And yeah, I think that for some people, doing different issues does lead to burnout. For me, doing one issue would lead to burnout because I do
Mm.
feel strengthened by being in different spaces.
That's really interesting. Well, I want to thank you not only
Thank
for
you.
this conversation, but for, many months of planning with me and with our rabbinic team and with
Thank you.
the support staff from the various venues and synagogues and day schools. And we are really lucky you've been with us. I know you joked, I think, only twice about not coming back for 10 years, but we plan to have you back much sooner than that to keep learning
Great.
from you. And
Great. Thank you.
I hope everybody enjoys not only this conversation, but enjoys the reminder to be grateful for our amazing community scholar and residence program.
And enjoy the gift of, there's a phrase, ein navi be'ero, that sometimes you underappreciate who's right in your town. Enjoy the gift of having Rabbi Laurie Matzkin as an
Oh,
educator right there.
very
Thank
kind.
you.
And all
Thank you
and
so
all
much.
my colleagues.
And all your colleagues.
Thank you.